models of evaluation, and you can pick and choose the models. Now a variety is available, and they are not sacrosanct. Like, you can customize them according to your own requirement or shorten them. But of course, the steps that you need to follow, they are the must, because if you do not have the data for the initial steps, it will be very difficult for you to do the evaluation in the later steps. And secondly, we also saw a number of instruments and tools, the questionnaires. They are quite important, and constructing a questionnaire is really an art. Like, you need to have a balanced mix of questions so that you can cater to the psychology of also of the participants, depending upon, of course, the kind of scenario you are in and the context on which you are making your questionnaire. One of the most important tools is the SWOT analysis. And SWOT analysis is actually a very versatile tool, and it can be applied to many situations. You can apply it to almost any situation in your life, in your personal life as well as in your professional life. Even if you're doing, you can do a SWOT analysis even of a organization or a situation or a proposal or a person, if you're recruiting new people, or any other document or any other situation. So SWOT is a very powerful tool, and it gives us very clearly the things that we value the most. So I want you to take you to the SWOT analysis and the training audit, which is there in your course. And let me share my screen with you, and let's do that. So I hope you are able to see my slideshow, and let us move on. So SWOT analysis and training audit. This will be the topic. And SWOT stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I'm sure you must have used it somewhere in your organization or your professional life. And it's not restricted to the professional life. You can use it in your personal life too. Strengths. The first S stands for strength. It is an acronym for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths. What are the strengths of a training institute or function? These are the questions that you need to ask while doing the SWOT analysis, or of a particular training strategy that is or could be used. What are trainers or other contributing to the institute or function proud of? Like, what is that value for which they are famous? What is the thing that they are having the best? What evidence is there that existing training has pleased client organizations? So you can do the strengths analysis. Trainees and funding agencies, what is there in the training that helps them recognize the training, makes them happy to take up that training, or give their funds to that training? What is the potential to improve either the effective or efficient use of available resources? So how can you improve performance? How can you use lesser resources, cut down your costs? And when we are talking about weaknesses, where is a training institute? Like, is it in a remote area? Does logistically we need to spend a lot of money if we want to send our people there? Or a particular training function is weak? So what is logistically also and functionality also? Where is a training institute or a particular training function weak? Could it be that their materials are not good? Could it be that their faculty is not good? Could it be that they have good trainers, but their facilities are not good? What are the weaknesses of an organization's training function? So weaknesses we have to see. In the opinion of trainers, training administrators, stakeholders and trainees at all levels, from senior officials to lower cadre workers, and from customers and beneficiaries, where are the deficiencies? So I think it is obvious to you that it cannot be just the opinion of the evaluator, and need not to say that you may need some questionnaires to seek opinions of trainers, seek opinions of training administrators, stakeholders and trainees, so that you get an overall picture of the weaknesses, and like involve people from lower to higher functionaries, and try to list out what are the weaknesses. So when we are doing SWOT analysis, actually what we are doing is we are listing the strengths and the weaknesses. And opportunities are, in what sort of ways can training and development generally, or training institutions or organizational training functions take advantage of opportunities created by technological changes or government initiatives. For example, if you want to send your workforce for a particular software training, and the institution there is very famous and it is internationally renowned, and its certificate is recognizable all over the world, then you can look into it that there's an opportunity for my staff or opportunity for the organization to claim that our people have been trained by a renowned organization, so that credibility is more from the clients. Then threats, when we talk about threats, what changes to technology or government policies are likely to be dangerous to the existing strategies and resources being used to provide training in the public sector? This is, of course, I have posed the question only for the public sector, but it's equally true for the private sector too. Like government policies, when they change, sometimes they pose a danger to the existing strategies, marketing strategies, or whatever resources a organization have. For example, many private organizations are not able to get raw material in Delhi or around Delhi because of the Kisan Andolan and things like that. That is just an example, a small example, but there could be many more things. Are expectations or demands likely to present threats, especially to training institutions or the roles and responsibilities of trainers? Now, because of the corona, a number of like face-to-face training is not happening. So, and if you look at the schools, many children are not able to access the internet. They do not have a facility of a laptop or a smartphone, so they cannot learn through online training. It is really a handicap for them. So this is a threat to their education, isn't it? So these kinds of things pose the threats. If you have looked at it closely, the strengths and weaknesses, if they are in a training institution or in a proposal or in a situation or a person also, they are inbuilt. They are inbuilt. But opportunities and threats are external things. Like because of some change and because of our strategy, there may be an opportunity which would be very good for us, or for an individual, or for the training institution, or for any activity under evaluation. Or it could be like a threat also, which is outside, on which you wouldn't have so much control, but you can prepare yourself for the challenge. If you can visualize what threats are there, then you are able to prepare people, prepare yourself, prepare the organization for the challenge. So whenever a training proposal comes to you and your help is sought to evaluate it, then SWOT analysis is a go-for tool. A SWOT analysis is generally depicted like this in front of you, and we write the issue here. Like, it's not necessary that you do SWOT analysis of everything. you or the whole organization as a whole, that can also be done. And you can also do it by issues. Like if there's some issue, for example, your issue is the course curriculum or course material of a training. So you can see the strengths, that it is in a simple language. For example, it is understood by everyone and it has the latest things inbuilt. And whatever weaknesses are there, you can list out. It is not available in the vernacular language, or there are weaknesses that high, um, it is costing a lot. Then opportunities you can list. And like it may give us a good knowledge and skill and good opportunity for the participants to learn more, and they can keep it as a record. Sorry. And threats could be like it may become obsolete by the time, and we are investing so much money, then by some time it might become obsolete. That is a threat. I'm giving you only an example. It could be anything else. Now, for example, there's an example I'm showing here. We're doing a SWOT analysis for the issue, the creation of own distributor company to access new end user sectors not currently being developed. Now the company has taken a help of an evaluator to find out whether they should go in for the new distributor, own distributor company. Currently, maybe they are distributing through some agency or some other organization. Now they want to have their own distributor company to access new end user sectors not currently being developed. So in this, the strengths could be, this is only illustrative, the end user sales control and direction, right products, quality and reliability, superior product performance versus competitor, better product life and durability, spare manufacturing capacity. Some staff have experience of end user sector, have customer lists, direct delivery capability, product innovations, ongoing, can serve from existing sites. That could be a good advantage. Products have required accreditations. Process and IT with should cope with the situation. Management is committed and confident. Now, if you look at the strengths, just a moment, I'll just pull on my laser. Yeah. If you look at the strengths, every strength, if catered for, if cared for, and if really utilized and analyzed, it may lead to opportunities. So the opportunity, if you have your own distributor company, could be in future you could have your own products. You will see that opportunities are always futuristic. They may not be inbuilt in the thing, but they are futuristic. Local competitors have poor products. Profit margins will be good. It's quite possible, because then you will have your own distributor. You don't have to pay to another organization. And users respond to new ideas, could extend to overseas. New specialist applications can surprise competitors. Support core business economies, could seek better supplies and deals. So these are the things. Now, if we look at the weaknesses for own distributor company, then it could be customer lists have not been tested. Some gaps in range for certain sectors. We would be a small player, like there are so many big companies already there. And naturally for a small player, there's some difficulty. No direct marketing experience. We cannot supply end users abroad, need more salespeople, limited budget, not so much money is available with the organization. No pilot or trial done yet. Don't have a detailed plan yet. Delivery staff need training. Customer service staff needs training. And processes and systems, etc. are required. Management cover is insufficient. They're not supporting so much. threats could be like there could be legislation which would impact. For example, there's an embargo by the government. Environmental effects would favor larger competitors. Existing core business distribution risk, market demand very seasonal, retention of key staff critical, could distract from core business. Like you will have to spend a lot of energy and time in the new company. So it might distract from the core business. Possible negative publicity and vulnerable to reactive attack by major competitors. So these are the threats, and as you can see, it is obvious that threats are external and threats are actually, you have to visualize, and threats are futuristic too. So they're not inbuilt, but it is a good way to analyze any situation or any proposal. Now let us come to the next topic, that is the training audit. And actually training audit is more or less a customized evaluation. That is what I believe. And I don't think it is very popular in India, but it's popular in West. And its purpose is to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the training or learning function in terms of its current responsibilities and future commitments. Like if a training is happening today, what are the good points in it? And what are the not so good points in it? And like, where are the points on which you need improvement? And if you're able to identify that, and then not only currently, presently, but later on, what would be similarly like opportunities or threats, what could be there? Now, since every organization is unique, each training audit is customized to meet the specific learning needs and requirements of each situation. For example, if you have to do an awareness training, it will be very different. And if you have to do some skill training, then the approach will be totally different. Now, why should we conduct any training audit? Actually, the first purpose is for conducting the training audit is that we want to match our organizational goals. Are we going in the right direction or not? Our organizational goals are listed, and whether our training programs would be able to match that. So we want to ensure that, and that is the first reason why we conduct training audit. Then training audit also does one thing, it guarantees your training programs are complying with industry standards. Whatever is happening around in the world, what are the industry standards, we are matching that, we are complying that. That is another reason to do the training audit. Then we need to discover important gaps in our training programs. Like we need to have some standard of performance, and our trainings are able to provide this much. And we needed some skills. Is the training able to give us those skills? So we discover important gaps in the training programs where we are lacking. And then another thing we get is why we do the training audit is to gain insight into your learners' preferences. What do the learners want? Actually, why should we stress on learners' preferences? Because, you know, it is you must have read it in design of training that the trainer should approach a trainee-centered approach. The trainer should have a trainee-centered approach or a learner-centered approach. Why? Because if you give what the learner needs, then the learner will be happy and he will gain more and he will be able to improve his performance more. The way he is able to understand, the way he is able to learn, that is also creating the learning environment around him. Then another thing we conduct training audit is to determine the overall effectiveness of our training programs. Are the training programs able to meet the standard of performance that we want them to do? So that is what the training audit is. Like, it is not necessary that you will be going in for all the purposes. It could be 2 or 3 purposes only out of this. So depending upon the situation, you customize your training audit. Now, there could be some deficiencies in learning programs, and like there could be a number of reasons for those deficiencies. Learning programs can be deficient for a number of reasons, and I have written only a short list. There could be many more reasons which you might be knowing, like decision-making stakeholders request poor learning design methods. For example, they want that you should give lecture, and in today's scenario, lecture is almost obsolete. Lecture is only when you are running a very large group. Say if you have 100 people to be addressed, then it is much better. Still, we have the audio visual things and other things. So if you have and decision making stakeholders, I don't know what could be their reason. Maybe their reason could be saving money, and they request poor learning design methods, or they do not have resources available to produce more effective designs. If they hire a efficient designer, then it might be difficult for them to pay him well. Project timelines do not enable more effective designs. Sometimes we have unrealistic timelines for our projects. Some projects do take time, and the senior management or stakeholders are not able to visualize why it cannot be done so quickly and why we should give it more time. As you learned earlier in evaluation, there is a time constraint also. Like, we need to give some time for the effects of the training to settle down. Then learning designers are unaware of better learning methods. It could be possible they don't even know that something else, something good exists. Legacy designs compel reuse of poor learning methods. Like, we have been doing it for so long and it is running in our organization. Why do we need new designs? Why should we do that new? Poor needs assessment. Needs assessment has not been done very well, and there are gaps, like there is deficiency in just conducting the needs assessment. Then also, it skews the content to wrong topics. You will be teaching them wrong topics, whereas they need some other topics which have to be taught. Poor media choices limit motivation and learning impact. For example, they don't have an overhead projector, and you can't show them the slides, you can't show them the uh, movie, and you have to do with only the flip chart or just by talking or on chalk with board, you by using chalk, etc. Adherence to rigid instructional design rules hurts learning. Like, we should not be like we say in Hindi, lakeer ka fakir nahi hona chahiye. We should not be adhering to rigid things. We should welcome change. Now, there are some more reasons. By doing a training audit, deficiencies will be uncovered that can be targeted for improvement. So you can know why this is not happening if you conduct a training audit. Then sometimes improvement can be made by learning design team themselves. They can do it and they can suggest the improvements. Other times the learning audit gives us the reasons, or you should say that they tell us enough, what do you call, ammunition. They give us ammunition to fight, to convince the stakeholders of the possibility and importance of making learning design improvements. Why we should improve the learning design, you can convince the stakeholders for that, and it gives you some material to use and show them when you do the learning audit. Now, how do we go about doing a training audit. How do we conduct a training audit? There are some steps, and you will be able to, like, they may seem similar to you, because it is actually an approach for evaluation, training audit. So naturally you will go step by step, and first of all you should catalog your training programs. Some people have their annual calendars, some people already have their listed training programs. So there must be a catalog which tells you when, what happened, how many participants did it, and you have obtained the feedback, and you must go systematically about it, get the feedback, get the faculty particulars, feedback on all aspects of training programs, and catalog that. And then you need to analyze. Analyze what? Whatever data you get and the feedback from the learner. Learner data, how many people have been trained, who was trained, when he was trained, and how he fared, whether if it was a summative assessment, whether he could make it or not. So analyze learner data, and also the feedback given by people who have attended the training program. And that is a very, very important step. I think that is a step that is common in most of the evaluations that you do, analyzing this data and feedback. And then evaluate employee performance. So I think you can match it with the levels also. First, we conduct the training, then we analyze the data and the feedback from the participants, then we do the evaluate the employee performance, that is the behavior level in Kirkpatrick, but that is how we go about in these steps also. And evaluate employee performance. Now you have different tools, you have questionnaire, you can observe, you can carry out interviews, etc., to evaluate the employee performance. And then assess opportunities for improvement. Should they be sent to some other training also? Yeah.
Term 1, there's one report card, but term 2, there's another.
I'm not able to hear you.
Are doing these things also, which you are already been doing in class 1, that is.
Beg your pardon, I didn't understand your question. Class 1. Can you please repeat your question? Who was talking? Shall I go ahead?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I think that was with someone else probably. So it wasn't a question posed to me, it seems. Is it?
Yes, must be some cross connection with someone.
Okay. So we were discussing how to conduct training audit. And the first thing is to catalog your training programs and analyze learner data and feedback. That is the second step. And evaluate employee performance. So you have a number of tools to evaluate employee performance. Like you can have questionnaires, you can observe people, you can conduct interviews, etc. And we have already discussed a number of tools for that. And then assess opportunities for improvement. Do the employees need more training? Do they need something for continuing their professional development, etc.? Okay. And then always tie training programs to organizational goals. So, are you able to hear me, all of you? My system is giving me a message that there could be low audio.
No, ma'am, it's all right.
So, all right. So
yeah,
we should always
right.
try to match the training programs to organizational goals. We should not do trainings as a blind faith and just going for because the name is fancy, because they're offering a very good thing. whether we need it or not. Does our organizational goal is helped by doing the training or not? This is what is involved in conducting a training audit. So let us go step by step how to conduct a training audit. And when we catalog our training programs, what activities do we do? First, what we do is we need a complete list. We compile a list, and it should be comprehensive. Like it could be a ready-made catalog also, like if you're keeping a TMIS or if you have a calendar. And so you need to compile a list of all the training programs you have developed to conduct a thorough audit. As well as the training programs your learners can access via your learning system and platforms. Maybe there could be e-learning, or a number of organizations train their employees through videos, etc. So for that also you should compile a list. And then having this master list or catalog, this will help you to audit each individual training program to ensure that it's effective and up to date. So you should keep on, according to the list, you can keep on auditing each individual training program. So what do we do in analyzing learners' data and feedback? Look at your learners' data to see which programs they take the most and how well they do in each of those trainings. Actually, this is true when the organization offers them a choice and they can pick and choose from training programs. Naturally, the learners would pick up those training programs which helps them to learn quickly and helps them to enhance their knowledge and is interesting to them. It will become boring if they don't gain much from this. So if most of your learners don't do well in a certain training program, that program may need to be revamped to suit their learning needs or preferences. You might have to change it altogether. For example, if learners seem to flock to a certain training program more so than others, learn more about why do they go. Is that the material very good? Is that the way of teaching or way of conducting the training is very good? What is it there that makes people go there? And that you can analyze from the feedback that they give you. Is the program accessed via mobile apps when your other programs aren't? That could be one big reason, because people, if they're in a metro also, they can just access it through their mobile app, or anywhere they can do it. But if it is not available through mobile apps, they may not be able to access it while in office or at home. So that could be one reason. So that if that is the reason, then you will have to look for other reasons also. Is it more interactive? Like the participant also has to say something or be active in it, give responses, etc. So if it is more interactive, naturally it will interest them more. Such learner data will provide you with insight into which training programs are more effective with your learners. You can also conduct polls and solicit learners' feedback directly to see which training programs they prefer and why. You can even run a questionnaire through them, or you can even interview people and learn their feedback directly. See what they have to say and tell. Everybody wants to tell when they have had a good experience, then they would. Even of course, when they have had a bad experience, people want to tell that. So by talking to them, by interviewing them, you will be able to know why they prefer it. Some might say that it was very short and quick and I could understand it very quickly. And if somebody says that I didn't like the program, he may have a complaint that it took very long, or it was a small thing, but it became very complicated in the training program and so on. Then what we do is we evaluate the employee performance. when we are conducting the training audit. That is the next step. And evaluating employee performance, what we do is we also evaluate the employee performance data collected before learners engage in training programs. So you can see here, the data that was collected before the training program began. When you evaluated that, that is also very important here. So also evaluate the employee performance data collected before learners engage in training programs, so that you can compare those data with data collected after they engage in training programs. If a group of sales associates take a sales training course, for example, you want to make sure that they became more effective salespeople after taking it. So you need to have something beforehand. Their sales performance should be better after they take the training course than it was before they took the course. Otherwise, the training course was not effective. So you must have data for that also. Now, next step is to assess opportunities for improvement. Look for areas where you can implement new technologies or strategies to make those programs better. Usually, you can use learner data and feedback and employee performance data to discover new opportunities, as well as industry trends and research. For instance, you might discover that your compliance training program can and should be conducted with virtual reality technology. Excuse me, just excuse me for 2 minutes. So what do we do here when we assess opportunities for improvement? Usually you can use learner data and feedback and employee performance data to discover new opportunities, as well as industry trends and research. That helps a lot when we are assessing the opportunities for improvement. And for instance, you might discover that your compliance training program can and should be conducted with virtual reality technology, or that you need mobile apps for your onboarding training programs. So that's the in thing today. And because people are very busy in their professional lives too, so it's better that they are able to access it through mobile apps. Scrap programs that don't work or incorporate newer technology into your training program so that they can work better. So it's very important to throw them away, scrap them. And if they're not working and they do not have newer technology, then people will not like them. And what do we do when we try to tie training programs to organizational goals? As you comb through each training program individually, make sure you tie each to an organizational goal. If your programs aren't tied to an organizational goal, they will not be effective or yield a high return on investment. So that becomes, without saying, a very important thing in training audit. So this was all about training audit, and we discussed two things here: SWOT analysis and training audit. And I will just go on to the next topic now.
Ma'am, just wanted to ask, this particular training audit, is done by whom, and what frequency it is done in a organization?
Actually, I have not seen any organ, although it's just my experience. It could be somebody else's experience, could be different. It's done in a very perfunctory way, even if it is done. And people do it without knowing that they are conducting a training audit. And it is not necessary they are following all the steps, because in organizations, people are looking at training programs and trying to scrap those which are not matching their organizational goals. They do try to analyze the feedback data, and but it is not much like the Kirkpatrick level. Mostly organizations stop at the second level, and third level is done very less. Similarly, training audit is, I don't think it's very popular here. Does that answer your question?
Ma'am?
Yeah, I feel what like just other functions. Since I belong to marketing and sales for a long time, and I am aspiring to come in training. But however, having said that, in marketing and sales, we have monthly review and audit also. But as far as training, it goes only once in a year or once in a half year. They just check out how many trainings were done, how many participants were trained, what was the attrition, and what was the outcome of the training, what the performance was improved before and after. And this minimal kind of training audit is performed.
Yeah, actually you are doing a training audit, and yes, maybe you are missing one or two steps, like tying it to the organizational goals, or conducting the pre-training performance evaluation. That might be missing here, but you are doing a kind of training audit only.
Right. And we also have this annually, just like marketing budget and all, we have training budget session also for 1 hour or so. They present what is the calendar they present, and they do perform the annual analysis of the previous year and present the next year plan.
I see, that is interesting. And like, you are aware of how much you are spending and where. That's a very important exercise you are doing in your organization. Many organizations don't even do that. Actually, training takes the last importance in their budget in most of the organizations. So they don't even bother about it then. Okay, shall we move on?
Yes, ma'am, please.
So I will take you to another topic now, and that is also required. I think you must have heard about stakeholder analysis. So just give me 1 minute. I will try to find out. So are you able to see the slide on your screens? Stakeholder analysis. So you must be able to identify who are the stakeholders and so on. And then you must be able to do an analysis. People who are affected by the training, continuance of the training or stoppage of the training or the feedback on the training, they're all your stakeholders. Now, why do we need such a tool? Actually, evaluation is just not a mechanical exercise. It also involves the psyche of people. It also involves sentiments. It also involves a number of things which you may say that they are not connected at all with the training, but they do exist. And the purpose of the tool here, stakeholder analysis, is view success or failure of training from a variety of perspectives. Naturally, from the perspective of different people who are connected with the training. It could be the HR manager, it could be the learner himself, it could be the employee, it could be the immediate boss, it could be the institution where the training is being conducted, or the trainer himself, even the designer of the training, whose design it is being used. He will also be connected with it. Then consider whether stakeholders' views are positive, negative, or simply indifferent. It is important for an evaluator to know this. Like, it will be easy for him to sell his ideas to people who are positive, and it will be definitely a hard nut to crack if he comes across negative people. And if people are indifferent, like they're not interested, so it's important to bring them in, make them interested in it. Only you can become interested only if you're able to show them some result or some benefit. So what effect will these views have on decision making? So you need to, first of all, view success or failure of training from a variety of perspectives. That is why we do stakeholder analysis. We consider whether stakeholders' views are positive, negative, or simply indifferent. Then what effect will these views have on decision making? And exploring the views of stakeholders can have a significant impact on evaluation. So, for example, if senior management who has the authority to reject or approve the proposal, if he's negative, it will be difficult for a decision to be implemented for going for an evaluation or accepting the recommendations of an evaluator. So exploring the views of stakeholders can have significant impact on evaluation. People who have a positive view of evaluation of training are likely to become proactive allies with the evaluator. They will help you. They will give you, produce the documents also. They will help you. They will make you access people easily. And whereas the views of others may limit what can be achieved through evaluation of training and what methods can be used. So stakeholder analysis is an important tool, but again, sadly, it's not much used, at least in India. Stakeholder analysis can include identifying who are the stakeholders involved. This is the first step, to know who are the people. Now look, I said that evaluation can be done at 5 points. So it is possible that at all the 5 points, individually, point 1 will have different stakeholders, point 2 will have different stakeholders, 3, 4, and so on. So at every point there could be different stakeholders involved. So list out the EOT issues that we wish to address. So first, identify the stakeholders who are involved. Then what is the issue on which we want to evaluate? Establishing the views of stakeholders towards evaluation of training initiatives. So we need to see what are their views towards the evaluation of training function. Mapping the power of stakeholder to take action against the dynamism or predictability of their willingness to use that power. Now, this is a prerogative of the evaluator. Like, you may use it for predicting whether they will be willing to approve it or reject it or stop it, or what do they do. So it's a difficult and a very tricky thing, but it does help. So Actually, if the evaluator is able to do up to the 3 steps, establishing the views of the stakeholders towards EOT initiatives, he is in a better position to progress with his evaluation of training function. Then mapping the power of a stakeholder to take action against the interest they have to do. So that is also involved, but generally maximum we would, if any organization does, is mapping the power of stakeholder to take action against the dynamism or predictability of their willingness to use that power. That is the maximum people do. But if you're able to do the last part also, then that is wonderful. So the first step is identifying the stakeholders. So whatever be the situation, the program, the learning event, yes?
In the previous slide, what was EOT?
EOT is evaluation of training.
Yeah.
I have written it in short, evaluation of training. Okay? What issue is there? Evaluation of training issue. For example, is it the course material that is the issue? Or is it the delivery of a particular training by the faculty that is the issue? It could be any issue. Or the location of the facility, that could be an issue. Or buying some new equipment for training, that could be an issue. That is the evaluation of training issue. Okay, so the first step is identifying the stakeholders. So what we do in that is stakeholders involved in a training program can be internal or external. And naturally, if they are, if you're looking at it from the perspective of training institution, trainer, management of the training institution, they are internal. External would be from, for example, designer, funding agency, people outside the organization. Then participants are always a stakeholder because generally whatever activity we do it on them. Then trainers delivering the program, they are the, for example, if you are doing a impact evaluation at the behavior level, then maybe the trainers would be external. They may not be the internal stakeholders at that place. Managers of the participants, those who design the program, and then those funding the program, the managers of the training institutes, the departments employing the staff. So more or less, these are the stakeholders in any training program. Look at this slide. Like if you're doing an evaluation of training, then you can have a plan also. Like you can conduct evaluations at different places. For example, A will be a place when a person is entering into the training. And B is a place where the person is already undergoing the training and he has shown some slight improvement in his performance now. And although you are not measuring the performance, but you are imparting him knowledge and skill so that you know that he is learning. And then C is when he is exiting the program and trying to enter. Here, transfer of learning becomes very important. And at these different places, there could be different stakeholders involved. Now he has worked for some time in his organization and he has reached some level of performance here and he's still improving, but a stage comes when he doesn't increase more than that. Now he has applied all the tricks and tips of the trade and he is, now does he require some remedial training or does he require something else here? That the organization has to think. Identifying the stakeholders. Some of these will be easily accessible to the evaluation of training team and others difficult to reach, to gain their views or to seek information from or for EOT. So we need to make a list. Who are the people? Who are the clear stakeholders? Stakeholders can be treated as individuals or groups also. For example, you can take the whole management as a group, as one stakeholder. And you can take participants as a group, as a stakeholder. But you need to take the top management, for example, the person who approves your evaluation of training project as the individual or the trainer as the individual. It depends what you are doing. If there are large number of stakeholders, it may be preferable to treat some as groups and only identify individuals in the analysis when they have high importance for the particular initiative. So that is how we should approach identifying the stakeholders. Now, identifying the evaluation of training issues, or you could say key issues. What is the burning thing that is there in this situation that you must be able to list? The issues to be addressed through an evaluation of training initiative need to be identified. This may depend on the level at which you are working or developing your evaluation of training initiatives. So they have to be addressed. Now, you may meet different kinds of stakeholders. There could be supportive, their views, they think training is good and evaluation will give you something which will help. And supportive people, they see the benefits of evaluation of training and giving whatever help is required. They will help you to access resources, to access people, etc. Some people would be neutral, perhaps also indifferent to EOT. It doesn't matter to them whether this is being conducted or not. So they're neither helping nor hindering your evaluation. They will not interfere. Opposing, possibly seeing evaluation of training as a threat. For example, there could be a trainer who thinks if evaluation is done unnecessarily, he will be blamed or his name will be tarnished or something. It could be, people could be uncertain. People don't know, unsure of what to expect or divide opinion about the consequences. So they may be having a divided opinion. It could be good, it could be bad. So they can just in Hindi we say pala badalna, or like the political leaders go from one party to another. They may be unstable. They may go towards positive side or they may go towards negative sides. So who are not sure and they're unsure of what to expect or have divided opinion about the consequences. So you have supportive, neutral, opposing, and uncertain people. Now let us look at it with an example, because till now I'm talking about stakeholder analysis and examples of stakeholder views and mapping. Let's have a look at this. Now let us look at this mapping stakeholders' views. Now I told you about 4 kinds of stakeholders that could be there, and we can record their views to a list of issues concerning evaluation of training. Now the key issue could be there, and if it is supported, we write plus. If it is neutral, we can write 0. Opposite, we can write minus, and that is negative. Then uncertain, who doesn't know? And that could be a question mark. Now, there could be internal stakeholders like trainer, designer, management of training institute. External could be participants or staff in organization. So, for example, we have listed on the left side some changes or some issues that concern the evaluator. Now, there could be one issue that we want to revise, the immediate reaction questionnaire. IRQ is an acronym for immediate reaction questionnaire, which is a questionnaire that is invariably given at the end of the training program to the participants to measure their reaction. That is the level 1 assessment. And it could be any one of those, their names are V, W, X, external are Y, Z. There could be any. Now, the internal are positive about it. V is positive about it. Whereas W may not be so. He may be a trainer. He says, no, we shouldn't revise. It is already complete and gives what we need. And so on. And in external, there could be supportive views also. Then the other issue is introduce product or process checklists. Again, people may have different views. And redesign objective test items, then again, they may have different views. So when we make a table like this and we try to make out who has what kind of views. These are actually names which I have indicated through letters of the alphabet. And introduce learning logs. Learning logs is an instrument where you write down what you have learned throughout your training program. And you can do it daily basis, learning event basis also. So it is a very good exercise to do. And this way you can keep a track of what you have learned and you can think about it and you can write your views. You can write what you have learned. So involve managers in evaluation or not. These are the issues on this side and these are the views of the people. So this is the mapping that we do in stakeholder. Now there's a case and if you wish, we still have some time and you can do that. I'll just show you the Word file here and you can go through it and you can try to do it. I will just share another Word file with you to get a to grasp how it is done. Now, this is actually a letter to an organization from a training institute and they are asking for an advice. And the advice, you can just go through it. Are you able to see this?
Yes, ma'am.
And you will have to go through it. So give yourselves 3-4 minutes, 3 to 3 minutes to read through this. And is the Zoom enough for you?
Ma'am, lower portion is not visible.
Beg your pardon? Lower portion. I will move it. Now, if you have read the above portion, I will move it a little bit. It tells you what to do. You have to identify who are the stakeholders in this situation. Identify what is the key issue here. Like, what does the letter tell you about? Because he's talking about a number of things which may not be so important. So what is the definite issue that you think is important here? Although it is a mix of a number of things that he's talking about. And what do you recommend? What should be done? So what you can do is you can identify the key stakeholders, and if it helps you, you can make a small map also, whether they will support the thing or not, whether they will be negative or not. But the main thing is to identify the stakeholders, and then what is the issue involved in this, and then what is the recommendation or action you want to suggest in this situation. If you want to reread the first portion, then I can move it back. So I think you have gone through it now, by now. Now, what are your views? Who are the stakeholders here? There is a mention of E here. E is the organization who gives funds and is wanting to, organization or a person who gives money, and he wants to monitor the use of the OHP or the video projector. So what? Who are the people who are involved? Who are the stakeholders?
Trainees.
Yes, trainees. Anybody else besides the trainees?
Trainers.
Yes.
The training department or the manager, because he's the one who is going to sanction and he's, you know, looking at some sort of advice.
Anybody else? Is there someone else too? Like, of course, the people to whom you have to report, who wants to monitor it, isn't it? They will also be a stakeholder, people who are funding it, isn't it?
Yes.
So, okay. Then what is the key issue involved here?
Expense or the budget? Not the budget, I'd say the expense, because the budget is already sanctioned, but you know.
It's really the expense or whether something else. He's taking your advice.
He's not sure of how long this technology will be new or it will be useful. So because of that only, he's more hesitant to spend such a big amount. So if some technical advice is available, then he'll be able to judge more better, I feel.
Anybody else? What could be the key issue here? Somebody said that the key issue is the spending money, expenses. Anybody else? Funds are available, he's saying. Isn't it the purchase of the projector, video projector? That is the key issue. He wants to decide whether he should buy the video projector or not. That is another key issue, isn't it?
Yes, he actually wants to delay it because he thinks in the next financial year, or I'm not very clear, but it will become cheaper. So
he may think like that, but then like the key issue is whether to go in for purchase or not. So what you can do is, if you have identified the stakeholders, you can map their views also. Like, will the trainer support it? I think the trainer himself is asking, so he will be very plus for this. isn't it? And the monitoring agency may be minus negative against it, or if they are negative, they will not be sanctioning the money. And if the senior management in the organization are positive, they may be able to persuade the people who are funding it. And then people who are monitoring it, they will be again uncertain probably whether it will be fruitful or not. So you can map their views, isn't it? Now, what are the actions or recommendations that you suggest after reading this? What do you think? Should you give the advice of whether he should buy it or do what? Actually, it cannot have a clear yes or no answer. Some people may say that yes, he should go ahead and buy it. Some people may say no, 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 it is costly, it will become obsolete. Like people who have a negative view, they may say don't go and buy, then it will become obsolete. But you can't wait for the technology to become obsolete because you need to use it right now, isn't it? That is just a factor that is deviating us, that is taking us away from this, the decision making, isn't it? And so you can recommend whether to buy it or not, depending upon your analysis. This was just an illustration to show how stakeholders can be identified in a situation, and then their thing can be mapped. Their views could be mapped or used. Let's go back to our talk and the PowerPoint. We have to share it again. We can't share two things at a time, simultaneously.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
the question which you just put up was like being analyzed, would have been analyzed through SWOT. I guess that would be the best to solve it.
Yes, you can. Definitely, you can use SWOT over that. Why not? But since I'm using the instrument stakeholder analysis here, so I just popped this thing for you. It would be an interesting thing to do. Where were we? We were here somewhere, I think. Okay, so you're able to see the PowerPoint now? So we have studied the in-tray exercise. Now the other step is mapping power dynamism. This analysis uses another metrics to examine the power individual stakeholders have against the likelihood of them using it. Now, one axis looks at their power, which could be direct. They have seniority or status or control the budget, or indirect due to their influence, due to their position within their organization, giving access to information or providing influence. The other axis estimates their predictability to use their power. So this could be either high power, low power, or predictability be again low power or high power. Just don't mind this, it being in the center. It should be high, should be here, somewhere here. It's just shifted due to alignment has been gone bad. So now the people who have high power but low predictability, they are the greatest danger or opportunities. And people with high power and high predictability, they're powerful but predictable, and you can suit them according to your need. You can just persuade them. And people who have low power and low predictability, they are unpredictable but they are manageable. And low power but high predictability, there can be few problems. Like they don't have problem even if they are negative, it doesn't matter. So this may be applied to each stakeholder in turn to provide a profile of those we need to consider carefully and those who can be expected to not present any challenges. So you, in your list, you can just make guesses whether this will be a problematic person or not. Actually, if you have just 3-4 people, then it doesn't matter. But if you have a number of people, then that becomes a problem. And it becomes like, it's good to have a mapping done on the stakeholders. So if you remember our earlier slide, this may be applied to each stakeholder to in turn to provide a profile to those we need to consider carefully and those who can be expected to not present any challenges. If you don't remember, I'll just move on the slide to show you that one. If you remember, we made this slide and V was positive in some ways and Y was positive in some ways. So this is their thing. And let us look at the current slide now. So for stakeholder V, we may rate them as B. B means in our earlier slide, coming here, unpredictable, but manageable. They don't have much power, but still there. And you can rate all of them like this. And this is the thing that we need to do. And for each stakeholder, you can rate them according to their predictability and power. So this is only illustrative. This is not the way we, like, this is not the only way we do it. And so in your slide, the stakeholders who need to be treated more carefully are X and Y. And one of them is internal and external. Let's have a look at them. X is 0, that means he's neutral, but he's negative for revision of IRQ, he's negative for redesigning objective test items, introducing learning logs, and so many things. And this person is uncertain in two things. So it will be, they will be challenging people. This is what the stakeholder analysis does. So people who have high interest, actually, this is just a slide to show you, but it's not necessary that you do it. People who have high interest, they will be the key players. People who have high interest, but they don't have power. People who have high interest and high power, they will be key players. You will have to satisfy them most. And people who have low power, but high interest, you need to keep them informed. Otherwise, they become a little like estranged with your efforts. And for low interest and low power, you don't need to do much. And people who have high power but low interest, you must be able to keep them satisfied. So are the people who need to be paid more attention to. So this is the slide that we saw earlier. And so looking at introduce product process checklist from the matrix, that is the second item here. If you look at this, V had plus, W had minus, X had 0, Y had plus, Z has plus. So if you look at that, it shows 3 stakeholders willing to support the issue, one who may oppose it and one who is neutral. To maximize the positive, minimize the negative, that is your effort here. And who are the stakeholders likely to have influence on EOT initiative? That is the thing you have to see. Are some more important than others? Which of them should be included in the matrix? Which issues within the EOT processes are likely to present problems? Like you have listed 5 or 6 issues. So is there going to be a problem with any of them? How do you make decisions about a stakeholder's attitude? Try to brace your judgment by talking to the person or with peers or documentary evidence that reveals their attitude. How are you going to take this information forward? This is the question that you ask yourselves. So what strategy will you employ to convince the doubters of the benefits of evaluation training? What strategy will you employ to convince the doubters of the benefits of EOT? How can you use the positive attitudes of some stakeholders to influence others? A tactic could be to gather a network of like-minded people as your allies. And you should put your energies on those who may help to shift the opinions. Stakeholders who are neutral probably need less attention, although you should keep them informed. Perhaps by becoming involved in discussing issues, they will develop a more positive attitude. So for using the mapping power dynamism matrix, using the same example, you can do it. I think I'll leave these slides with you. And this is quite detailed, so there's no need to go into it with so much detail. But if you're interested, you can just go through the slides. And that is what I wanted to say here about the stakeholder analysis. So today we discussed the SWOT analysis, the stakeholder analysis, and what else did we do? Training audit. So next session will be that Sunday, 10 a.m. again, and we will be meeting again there. So I end my session here. If you have any questions, you're welcome. Otherwise, we'll meet in the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.